aces to 4, 10 winners to 25. 2 different matches, 2 different opponents, 2 days apart. If I told you those were the stat lines of the loser, you'd nod. Numbers like that lose tennis matches every single day, on every tour, in every era. Except both times, the player on the wrong side of those numbers won. Beat an Olympic gold medalist on Tuesday. Beat a defending champion on Wednesday. Outgunned both times on paper, in the box score, in every column that's supposed to tell you who's better. Stay with me. It's just past 2 a.m. in Manila when the messages start. Group chats lighting up. A grandmother refreshing a live score app she didn't know existed a week ago. Somewhere in Washington, D.C., 7 time zones behind, a 21-year-old is bouncing a tennis ball off the baseline 4 times before every single serve, always 4, never 3, never 5, a habit so small nobody would notice it unless they'd watched her do it 100 times before. She adjusts her visor. She doesn't look at the box score between points. She's never needed to. Her name is Eala. The Rock Creek Tennis Center doesn't have the roar of Arthur Ashe or the hush of Center Court. It's smaller than that, a mid-tier hard-court stop in the thick of an American summer. The kind of tournament that exists in the calendar's shadow, sandwiched between Wimbledon's afterglow and the walk-up to the US Open. But this week, something's different. There are Filipino flags in sections that don't usually see them. Ticket staff are fielding the same question over and over, from people who've never watched a tennis match in their lives. The air feels heavier than a 250-level event should. Something's building here that the schedule never planned for. And in 18 hours, it's about to get tested twice. Rewind 3 years, and Eala is a name only insiders know, a teenager training at Rafael Nadal's academy in Mallorca, grinding on clay courts most fans will never see footage of. By 21, she's the highest-ranked Filipino player in the sport's history. A nation of over 100 million people funneling its tennis hopes through one player's racket for the first time ever. Her game earns a nickname among the people who track this stuff closely: Spectacular Afternoons. Because Eala doesn't lose quietly to good players, she beats great ones. Svitolina falls. Rybakina falls. Clawed back from a set down. And in July, at Wimbledon, she does something no Filipino has done in the Open era. She takes down Iga Swiatek, a multiple Grand Slam champion, and reaches the 4th round of the most famous tournament on earth. That's the ceiling. Breathtaking, undeniable, the kind of win that trends worldwide. But ceilings have a problem. What goes up has to come down, and for Eala, it usually did. Fast. In the very next round, against players ranked nowhere near her level. One title shot final lost at Eastbourne in 2025. No WTA Tour trophy. Ever. Not one. The talent was never the question. The question was whether she could win on an ordinary day, not just a perfect one. Tuesday in DC, the day doesn't start ordinary. It starts hostile. Zheng Qinwen walks in as an Olympic champion, a serve that regularly touches the 120-mile-per-hour range, a forehand built to end rallies before they start. And for most of the first set, it does exactly that. Eala drops it. 6-4. She falls behind a break in the second, then loses a service game at love, the kind of hole that ends matches against players like this. 14 aces land against her racket over the course of the day. She manages 4 of her own. On serve, this isn't close. And then, somehow, it flips. She breaks back immediately. Something shifts, not in her serve, because that never becomes the weapon. It's in what she does with the ball once it's in play. She redirects instead of overpowers. She adds depth instead of pace. She makes the court, against one of the most aggressive ball strikers on tour, feel smaller than it is. 7 straight games disappear from Zheng's side of the ledger. Final score: 4-6, 6-4, 6-1. There's a strapped leg under her sock from a knock picked up at Wimbledon. This is her first hardcourt match in weeks. She gets stronger as the match gets longer, which is not supposed to happen to a 21-year-old on a bad ace count. One day. One statistically impossible win. Then Wednesday arrives. less than 24 hours later, and it's arguably worse on paper. Leylah Fernandez isn't just the defending champion of this event, she's a US Open finalist. A lefty who gave Eala a beating in Stuttgart back in April 6-1, 6-4, no argument. The rematch script writes itself. And early on, the numbers back it up. Eala finishes the match with 10 winners to Fernandez 25. 15 fewer clean, outright winners. In most matches, that gap alone decides everything. But there's a second number sitting quietly next to it, and this is the one that actually tells the story. 4 unforced errors to 14, just in that first set. Fernandez is hitting more winners and giving away 3 times as many free points doing it. Eala takes set 1, 6-2. Then the fatigue of a brutal 24 hours seems to catch her down 5-1 in the second set, serving to stay in the tournament. The wind picking up, the DC summer air thick around her. This is where spectacular afternoons usually end, quietly, in straight sets that don't match the hype. Instead, 5 straight games. 6-5. Fernandez forces a tiebreak. Of course she does. She's the champion. She doesn't fold either. Eala wins it 7-1. Closes it with 2 forehand winners in a row. She didn't need to be the better attacking player. She needed to survive being the worst one twice, in 2 days, against 2 people who've stood on Olympic podiums and Grand Slam final stages. Here's the paradox, and it's the whole reason this story matters more now than it would have if she'd blown both opponents off the court with a career-best serving day. Losing the ace battle by 10, losing the winner count by 15. Those aren't flukes losing disguised as wins, they're 2 of the most reliable ways to get outgunned in tennis. And she absorbed both, back-to-back, and still walked away 2-0. Everyone on tour can have one great day. The players who last are the ones who can survive a bad one and still find a way to win it. That's the difference between a ceiling and a floor, and for 2 years, Eala's floor was the unanswered question. She said it herself plainly. After the win, the mindset was always there. What's different now is the ammunition. Andy Roddick, watching from outside the sport's usual noise, called it what it is: a real story, a real phenomenon, not hype manufactured by a highlight reel, because this is bigger than a 250-level draw in Washington. Look at the season building underneath it. Svitolina beaten. Rybakina beaten from a set down. Witek beaten at Wimbledon, first Filipino in the Open era to reach a 4th round at any slam. 2 wins over players ranked inside the world's elite. In the space of 24 exhausting hours. On the surface, she's played the least all year. This is why 100 million people, most of whom couldn't have named a single Filipino tennis player 5 years ago, are suddenly checking scores at TAM. It's not really about tennis for them. It's about a country watching one 21-year-old carry something they've waited generations for, and it's about anyone, anywhere, who's ever been told the talent isn't the issue. The consistency is. Eala just spent 2 days answering that specific accusation, against 2 of the hardest possible opponents, in real time on camera. But here's what should make you impatient, not satisfied. She still hasn't done the one thing this whole story is building toward. No WTA Tour title. Not one. She enters this week ranked 28th in the world, a career high of 29, achieved fresh off the grass swing at Wimbledon, and there's a real mapped path from here into the top 25, even the top 20, if she defends the modest points she picked up in Toronto and Cincinnati last year, and simply holds serve on form. A final in Washington this week would be her first tour-level final outside the challenger circuit. A title here or in the North American hardcourt swing that follows, the exact stretch of tournaments that leads straight into the US Open, would be the first line in a much longer Ursum. And it's not just happening on the court anymore. The tournament chairman in DC said something telling this week that roughly 80% of the ticket inquiries coming in were about one player. And one player only. Reporters have started asking her, repeatedly, what it feels like to represent an entire country. She's taken to answering the crowd in Tagalog, thanking them directly, in a stadium built for a different kind of star. That's pressure no scoreboard measures. And this week, for the first time, she carried it and the tennis at the same time. So go back to where we started. 14 aces to 4. 10 winners to 25. 2 nights ago, those numbers looked like a warning sign, a talented kid getting outclassed by better ball strikers twice, and somehow escaping with the scoreline. Now you know what they actually were. Proof. Proof that on her worst statistical days, against an Olympic champion and a defending champion, on back-to-back afternoons, with a strapped leg and 24 hours of recovery, she still finds a way to be standing at the end. The talent was never the question. It never needed defending. What Eala just proved, twice, in 48 hours, in a stadium that wasn't built for this kind of attention, is that the floor moved. Nobody's asked yet what happens when the ceiling and the floor finally meet in the same final. Do you think Eala breaks into the top 20 before the US Open? Comment below and be specific about the number, because we're coming back to check. In a few years, when everyone knows this name you'll want a record of when you knew first.